you're trying to buy a new MacBook right now, good luck. Because Apple has just raised a bunch of their prices to the point where people's hopes and dreams of owning a MacBook Pro have completely been shattered. Look at this, $2,000 for a base MacBook Pro with the base M5 chip. What is going on? So due to these unfortunate circumstances, you might have one option left, which is this fanless MacBook Air, which still chews through your wallet. That kind of money makes you want to close your tabs and climb out your window. And recently, I've been obsessing over one idea. Maybe I don't need my MacBook M5 Pro. Maybe I don't need the fans and the extra ports. Maybe I could survive with just this MacBook Air and save a bunch of cash. Perhaps I'm not even aware how powerful this thing is. So originally I got the MacBook Pro because I was scared that the Air model could not handle my intensive work. What are you doing? I'm just doing some research. You've been watching this stuff for like the last 12 hours. You call this research? Yeah, it's a project I'm working on. I just need some inspiration. Right. Okay. But when I do eventually do some work, the fans always kick in and I think, the MacBook Air would so overheat right now and turn into a baking tray. But owning a MacBook Pro created a whole kind of problem because now I'm obsessed over this idea that I need all of this ridiculous specs in order to do any work. And now that I think about it, the 48GB of RAM is really overkill here. And just 2 months ago, I paid £2,500 for this MacBook. And now when I check Apple's official website, this same configuration would cost me £3,100. Wow, if I had to buy this again, I wouldn't. I couldn't. I'd be cooked. And speaking of being cooked, recently in the UK we had a little bit of a heat wave, and because we have no AC, my room felt like an actual air fryer. Being the genius that I was like, you know what would make this situation even better? Let me do some gaming in a heat wave. So booting Red Dead Redemption 2 with crossover, the Mac would gradually work up to 100% fan speed, at which point I felt the need to stack it on top of this box to keep the heat out. And at this very moment, I was like, this is why I got the MacBook Pro. It's for the fans to play games in the heat. I sound so unemployed right now. Anyway, this situation made me think there is no way that the Air model could possibly replace my MacBook Pro. I need all of this power. I need to justify my purchase. So to save some money, I was like, let's buy this used. What? Even the used prices are cooked? Anyway, the first time I picked up the Air, I was like, iPad? Like, I know the design hasn't changed in like 4 years, but damn, this thing feels light. In fact, this is barely any heavier than my iPad Pro with a keyboard case. Why the hell is this thing so heavy? And although it's only a 300-gram difference from the 14-inch Pro, I can definitely feel the difference, especially because it's thinner by like 0.2 inches. That 0.2 inches makes a big difference. Trust me, I would know. It makes me want to use it everywhere. I want to use it on the couch. This ain't the couch. Carry it with one hand. Take it to bed. I would even put it in my pocket if I could. And if you carry around your MacBook, which you probably gonna want to do, you will love these laptop sleeves from our sponsor, TomTalk. This is the Essence A35. It feels very slim and light. So if you slide in your MacBook Air, it fits snugly, it doesn't move around, and it barely adds any bulk to your backpack. The best part is that it has corner armor and slow rebound inner material, so if you squeeze it, you can see it return to shape. Quite satisfying and very reassuring if you chuck your backpack around. It does have a deep pocket at the front, but if you're more of a 15-inch guy, there's also the bigger Essence A34 that has an additional front and back pocket to chuck in some chargers, power banks, or a whole mouse if you like. And if that wasn't enough, the outside uses a water-resistant fabric, so if you start your day by knocking over your drink, at the very least, your laptop is gonna be protected. It does the job, it looks good, and it's quite affordable, so check the links down below and get yourself some protection. When I took this thing to bed, I realized that she uses 2 watts while browsing Chrome. What? I didn't know MacBooks were that efficient. It uses less power than a desk lamp. The Pro used like 3 watts, but then spazzing the mouse would cause a big spike in power to like 10 watts. And scrolling YouTube up and down also caused it to spike to over 15 watts. But doing the YouTube spaz thing on the Air only made it spike to like 5 to 6 watts. And I think the combination of a brighter 120Hz, higher resolution screen means that my MacBook Pro has straight up a worse battery because it wants to suck more power just because it can. Not by much, but it made me realize how efficient the Air is. That same night, I pulled up some YouTube because researching the whole day wasn't enough apparently, and immediately the speakers sounded like ass. Okay, look, so this is the speaker on the MacBook Air. And like, you think it's okay for a MacBook, like it doesn't sound bad, but then... like I knew there would be a difference, but the difference in bass is huge. I'm someone who loves watching stuff in bed, and suddenly I don't have a desire to do so. The bass is completely gone, and at this point I'd rather just use my phone, which somehow sounds better. I know it's closer to my face, but how is that possible? How can a phone have a better speaker than a MacBook? And since the battery was dying, I went to charge it and I realized that there's no ports on the right side. Now, I knew there were only 2 ports and I knew that they were both on one side, but I didn't realize that it would somehow be annoying. And speaking of ports, they are both Thunderbolt 4, whereas on the MacBook Pro, they are Thunderbolt 5. Boo-hoo, big deal. But I actually have a Thunderbolt 5 deck, and connecting the Air to the dock actually works surprisingly well. My main monitor runs at 4K 165Hz, and my second monitor, well, it worked once, and then for some reason it didn't connect anymore. And to be fair, it's running through 2 hubs, so I don't even know who to blame anymore. I think it's just confused at this point. But that's not a concern. I am more concerned if the Air will survive my brutal gaming session. So I pulled up Crossover, ignored the free trial, and when I was validating Red Dead Redemption 2, the temperature rose to almost 80 degrees. At one point, I even saw 90 degrees. That's not really reassuring when I'm not even in the game. It's like the Mac was already preheated, and when I was in the game with my usual settings, I was only hitting like 15 FPS, which is far from playable and not even close to what my MacBook Pro could do. Now, to be fair, I was only using like 12 watts and it really didn't want to go above that, and so the temperature was like completely fine. But then dropping the resolution all the way down to 720p still only gave me like 25 FPS. Okay, what if I run a native game like Cyberpunk? Maybe it will actually want to use that power properly. And well, there is an option called For This Mac, and to be fair, it actually runs pretty nice at 30 FPS, and it seems to unlock more power, but if you play it for more than like 5 minutes, this power quickly drops down to like 10 watts, and the FPS instantly drops. Whereas my MacBook Pro sustains like 70 to 80 watts. That is a huge difference. So this Mac is powerful for like 5 minutes, and then it struggles, which means that anytime I want to do some gaming, this thing gives me a little bit of anxiety. And you know what, at this point, I don't even know if I want to do any gaming, or am I just trying to justify buying the Pro? Then I decided to do something more productive, actual work. And trust me, eventually I do end up doing some editing. It just takes me quite a while to get there. Here's the thing, if you wanted to edit on the go, well, you can't, because there's no SD card slot. Apple just wanted to make this laptop worse for no reason. Enjoy using a dongle, by the way. To test some editing capabilities, I loaded my last video, which was pretty heavy on transitions, and apparently it was 72 gigabytes, and simply loading the project made it shoot up to 98 degrees, which I know it's a short burst, but almost 100 degrees and hasn't even edited anything. And to be fair, once I was in, it was actually pretty smooth, and it would only occasionally spike to like 70 degrees, especially when I played back some heavy transitions, but all of that is in short bursts, and it would quickly render a section and then slow down again. So the real test would actually be some rendering, which I had some really low expectations for. When I started rendering, I was only using like 15 watts, and I was like, this will never overheat. But it will also take like 20 years to render this, whereas the MacBook Pro was pulling up to 70 watts, so I was like, surely this will be like 5 times quicker. But to my surprise, the final render times were 8 minutes on the M5 Pro and 14 minutes on the MacBook Air, which was super impressive. So I did the same test on the M1 Pro, and that finished in 10 minutes. Wait, what? I'm so confused. You're telling me that I spent all of this money just to save 6 minutes and the actual timeline felt almost just as smooth? Even the M1 Pro crawled out of retirement to make me look stupid. But anyway, the M5 Air just kind of confuses me because it is powerful in short bursts, but then in those short bursts, it heats up super quick. But then when it comes to actual long editing sessions or gaming, which I know you're not supposed to do, it barely uses any power because it's afraid of overheating. Surprisingly, editing is not the problem here because technically it still gets everything done. Eventually, it's actually everything around it. The bigger problem for me is actually the speakers, and I know that's probably the dumbest thing you heard all week, but a good chunk of my laptop experience is in bed. Let me tell you a little secret, I still sleep with my 16-inch M1 Pro, and yes, it does feel like I have a whole microwave in bed. But damn, does this microwave have some good bass. But if that's not a problem for you and you're not planning to do any heavy gaming, the Air actually makes more sense than any of the Pro models considering the crazy prices. But you could also just get the M1 Pro, which fixes most of the issues with 120Hz, more ports and actual fans. It would be a lot cheaper and only a little bit heavier. What a deal. But for me, I don't think I could downgrade, not because I can't do any work on it. I clearly can, it's just that ironically the Pro is better for all the stupid things that I do instead of my job, like watching YouTube in bed and playing games. So yes, I'll take the fans back, I'll render that video 6 minutes quicker, and I'll use those 6 minutes to watch more YouTube. Anyway, thanks for watching, I'll see you in 5 minutes, coming to your house.